All right, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Northern Middlesex Metropolitan Planning Organization. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item on our agenda is welcome and introductions. So who will be calling the roll today, Justin?
I'll call it.
Okay, sounds good. You can go ahead.
Okay, roll call. Massachusetts Secretary of Transportation, MassDOT CEO Gina Fiandaca.
Yep, Derek Cravat here representing MassDOT Secretary and CEO Gina Fiandaca.
MassDOT Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Hi, Brian Fallon representing Highway Administrator Jonathan Gulliver.
Right. NMMPO Chair Andrew Delorier.
Here.
NMMPO Representative Pat Willis.
Here.
LRTA Board Chair Tom Boble. He told me he couldn't make it. LRTA NPO Representative Karen Coolio. See her. And Lowell City Council Representative NMCOG and the NPO Dan Rourke. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Next on the agenda is the approval of the February 22nd, 2023 meeting minutes. I'll ask for a motion and second to approve these minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Anybody? You would like to second the minutes? Okay. I will second them as the chair. So moved by Andrew and seconded by Masa. Any comments or questions on the minutes? All right, seeing none, call the roll, Justin.
Okay, Derek Cravat,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Andrew Delorier,
Yes.
Pat Willis.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda is a status report on transportation improvement program projects under design and construction. So I'll turn it over to District 4 to walk through this one.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Tim Paris, District 4. We just have a couple items today. For project 608-816, Lowell, Drake at Methuen resurfacing and related work on Route 110. That has a new add date, April 9th of 2024. 610-704, Burlington, Bill Ricker resurfacing and related work on Route 3A. That add date has changed to 6/17/2023, and we have some adjustments to the estimates. 608-774, Lowell Tewksbury Route 38 intersection improvements. That also has had an update to the add date for May 6th, 2023. And that is all of the updates.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Are there any questions for Tim? All right, seeing none. Sarah, did you have anything on District 3 projects?
Just the where did it go? The 495 bridge. Oh, I don't see it on here. That's due to be advertised next week. Let me look on my other spreadsheet real quick. No.
Okay. Sounds good.
Is that in Westford?
Yeah, I believe so.
Is it the one over Boston Road or?
Yeah. Oh, I lost it. I
don't
will
see it.
look it up real quick on oh, there's PIMPO. Okay. Yeah, the bridge preservation project 495 over Concord and Boston roads. It should be advertised next week. That's the only one for this fiscal year.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.
Yep.
That's 612-656.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. All right. With that, I think we can move on to our next agenda item, which is an open forum opportunity for comments. Is there anyone from the public or others that would like to address the NPO today? All right, seeing none, we can move on to agenda item 5, which is the Envision 2050 update. Turn it over to NMCOG, who's Jessica, to walk through this one.
Thank you.
Great.
Share my screen. Can you see my notes?
Nope.
No.
Hi everyone, so today I'll be providing a preview of our public forum number 2. Tonight we have a presentation taking place at UMass Lowell on our Envision 2050 plan. That is our new long-range transportation plan. The agenda for today, we're going to start off by providing an overview of the RTP. We're going to review our existing conditions and analysis. We'll provide a little bit of an update on our engagement activities. We'll share our survey findings, performance measures, financial allocation, and next steps and timeline. Then we'll finish up with questions. Envision 2050 is our comprehensive vision for the future of transportation in the NMCOG region. By projecting and planning for anticipated growth over a period of 30 years, this plan will establish a foundation for cost-effective, energy-efficient, and equitable transportation options for all users. On this slide, you'll see the topic areas that we plan to cover with this plan. Our region consists of 1,763 miles of roadway, 345 miles of trails, 572 miles of sidewalk, and 25 miles of bike lanes, or roadways with bike lanes. On this bar chart, you will see the pedestrian and bicyclist crash totals for our region. You can see that there's been the light blue line shows pedestrian crash totals, and then the dark blue line shows bicycle crash totals. So you can see there's been a slight increase in 2019 in bike crashes, and also a slight increase in pedestrian crashes. This pie chart displays the percent of motor vehicle crashes by municipality from 2017 to 2019. Lowell displays about half of the pedestrian or of the motor vehicle crashes in our region, but a lot of that has to do with the density. Lowell's a more dense city than some of the others in our region. So it makes up about half of the total motor vehicle crashes. This chart displays the LRTA preventable accident rates within their service area. And you'll notice that in 2021, there was a slight increase, but a lot of the increase on this particular map has to do with the reporting that's required by the federal government. There's been an increase in reporting, even the smallest accidents. So now you can see that the rate has obviously gone up slightly. I'd like to show some examples of our infrastructure challenges in our region. This slide displays some challenges in Billerica. The photos sort of speak for themselves, but you can see some of the areas that we'd like to highlight with our plan. The next, we'll be talking a little bit about Route 110 in Chelmsford. You'll see that there's actually a trailhead right here on this photo that could use better signage, also some shortening of the intersections here, better crossings to limit the crossing distance. There's actually a park located right behind here. So this is just another area we'd like to highlight. And then you can also see some of the infrastructure related challenges facing Lowell from this slide here. This person's in the road rather than a bike lane. This person's in a wheeled mobility device, and they're right on the crosswalk. Now I'll share a little bit about our survey findings. So we had our survey open for about 8 months. And in total, we received about 441 responses. About 23% of our survey respondents were between the ages of 55 and 64. 68% of the respondents were white. 71% of respondents stated that they own their own home. 47% of respondents mentioned that they earn over $90,000 annually. And 33% of respondents reported that they have advanced degrees. So that's a PhD or a master's. When we asked participants to explain what are some of their barriers to using public transit in our region, the top 3 reported answers were proximity to key destinations, access to transit stations or stops, and the frequency of the transit services. The top 3 reasons for barriers to walking in our region were lack of sidewalks, safety concerns, and maintenance of infrastructure. Similarly, we asked participants what were the barriers to rolling. And rolling includes anyone that uses a wheeled mobility device, from a wheelchair to a scooter, skateboard, anything of that nature. And the top 3 answers there were lack of sidewalk, safety concerns, and the maintenance of infrastructure. When we asked what types of destinations need better transit connections, survey respondents said jobs, healthcare services, and food retailers. When we asked how participants would like to improve the transportation options within our region, they said improve first and last mile connections, provide more multimodal services, and provide more frequent service. This last survey question, we asked participants to prioritize how we should spend our transportation dollars. Reliability was the first choice, environmental impact, connectivity and coverage, equity and fairness, safety, condition of physical infrastructure, and user cost. You can see that they're all in the 90s and 100s, except for user cost, so those are pretty high rating for all of those areas. On this slide, you'll see our federal allocation. Massachusetts will receive $32.2 billion from federal highway through 2050, and those funds will be distributed across these 5 different programs. And the remaining statewide programs will be about $77.2 billion, and that's in safety, trails, safe routes to schools, and complete streets programs. On this slide, you'll see the regional highway allocation. And it goes from 2024, and you can see the different ranges across our region for the NPO. So this has increased. It's expected to increase by that year. For timeline, we're in the process of having our public forum number 2, which will be held this evening. And we're in the process of also drafting our plan for Envision 2050. We will be in the process of putting together our final draft plan and presenting it for final comments come June. And there'll be a 21-day public comment period open to the public. I'd like to finish up if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Jessica. Great presentation. I see a hand raised from Derek Schuster. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jessica. Excellent presentation. I just wanted to note a couple slides back where you were showing the federal highway apportionment. It's not a definitive will. It's anticipated. I just wanted to clarify that. The assumptions we made for the future were based on what we expect from the bipartisan infrastructure law through 2026, and because those increased at a rate of 2% annually during that time frame, the state level assumptions through 2050 were at an average rate of increase of 2% for most funding categories.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that's not misconstrued by anyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That's an important disclaimer.
Yep. Thank you. Andrew.
Thanks, Derek. I like Jessica's number better. But just a question, Jessica. Thanks for the presentation. Have we seen that data normalize post-COVID as of yet, or is there permanent trends that have taken effect since the pandemic?
I think we're still in recovery. We have not seen ridership, I know, on the transit services return to pre-pandemic levels. There is a steady increase, but we're not back at the same rate that we were before. I think also some other factors are remote work and how people are moving about in their local neighborhoods. We know a lot about commute trips, how people get to and from work. We're still finding ways to measure and understand the more local trips that people are taking in response to the pandemic. So I would say that we're in recovery and we're seeing the numbers come back, but in terms of walkability, I think that the prioritization of that has certainly increased. Walkability, bike access, and easier multimodal connections within your local area.
And just if I could ask one more question, just given the average salary, which is commensurate with most of the region, but not individually areas, do you think the survey was any sort of, I'm going to use the word bias, but I don't mean wrong, but was it heavily weighted towards more community type professions versus folks who are more not driving as much to their workplaces?
Certainly, I think that we are in the process of looking at more ways to engage with folks that are with a wider income bracket. I think we did hear from most participants that were over the age of 90, that earned $90,000 or more. And I think that a lot of that is attributed to people that just were willing to respond to the survey. I think we can do a better job at finding more transit riders, more vulnerable populations, and that's something that we're looking to do. We recently finished up our Title VI plan that helped us identify the environmental justice neighborhoods. And I think in response to that, that's going to really help with our outreach going forward.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question.
Thanks, Andrew. Any other questions for Jessica? All right, seeing none, thank you. I will move on to the next agenda item, which is a performance measures update on performance measure area 3. So I have another presentation. I'll be giving this one from MassDOT. I will share my screen. Just make this full screen here. So I'll be talking today about the system performance measures. The MPO has previously voted on safety performance measures on pavement and bridge condition. That was at last month's meeting in February, and this month we'll be reviewing the PM3 measures, which is a catch-all category written into federal regulation that all state DOTs and MPOs have to adopt. This measure area includes improving the efficiency of the system, reducing traffic congestion, and reducing emissions. The specific measures that are included in it are on this side here. So there's a category called travel time reliability. Within that, there's level of travel time reliability on both the interstate and non-interstate system, as well as for truck travel time reliability. There are 2 measures under congestion, one referring to non-single occupancy vehicle travel, and one for peak hour excessive delay, which I'll walk through. And then the final measure relates to emissions reductions, which really is just a very specific measure for projects that are funded with congestion mitigation and air quality improvement funds, which is one of our core formula sources, only in projects that are in air quality maintenance or non-attainment areas, one of which is Lowell. So we assess that as part of this sort of measure area, but I'll get to that as well. First is just defining what these terms are. So level of travel time reliability is referring to the amount of time it takes to drive particular lengths of segments and whether that travel time is considered reliable. So it's not necessarily considered uncongested. Congestion and reliability are not the same concept, although they are related. Reliability really just means the predictability of travel time. So a roadway could be consistently congested and still be considered reliable because you could always anticipate it taking the same amount of time to travel across that particular segment. So it's really a measure of variability in travel time. As far as the reporting goes, we have to report this on the statewide level through MassDOT to Federal Highway by December 16th of last year. And then all of the MPOs have to endorse these targets as well or establish their own. And then those get rolled into the 3C documents. We wanted to do this now so they could be put into the upcoming TIP document. A little more detail on LOTTR. Won't get too in the weeds. It's a pretty technical kind of calculation that goes into it. But essentially, this is just looking at 2 different sort of, we take all of the different interstate and non-interstate roadway segments across Massachusetts, and we look at the 80th percentile and 50th percentile travel time through those segments. And then we get a number that refers to how predictable or variable that travel time is. So the higher that number, the less predictable it is, the more variation there is, and therefore the lower the reliability. So we roll that all up and we report it as a percentage of roadways that are considered reliable. That's for roadway travel time reliability. This slide is for truck travel time reliability, so we also look at reliability just for trucks that are traveling, again, reported on the statewide level, and the same process where we endorse them in December, and then the NPOs have to vote to endorse them subsequently. Similar calculation as far as that goes, looking at different percentiles of travel time. The difference with truck travel time reliability is that we compare the 50th percentile to the 95th percentile. It's a little bit of a stricter standard because if there are delays in truck travel time, then there are more implications of that as far as food delivery being on time and things like that. So we use the 95th percentile instead. That's all part of the federal regulation on that as well. So getting into the actual data that we see for interstate travel time reliability, we see that between 2017 and 2019, kind of pre-pandemic, reliability was declining. So 70% down to about 69% in 2019. That's again referring to the percentage of all roadway miles on the interstate statewide that were considered to be reliable, or you could predict the travel time on them. Of course, with 2020 and COVID hitting, there was a huge spike in reliability because there weren't as many vehicles on the road, and so therefore a lot less congestion and more predictability in how you could kind of travel around. So slowly declining since then as we start to see a little bit more of a normal return to traffic statewide. Of course, a little bit different than pre-COVID, but nonetheless, pure numbers looking at definitely more traffic on the road. So for our actual targets, and again, there's no exact science to how these get developed, but we look at a lot of different kind of qualitative and contextual factors and come up with potential percentages of where we think, or where we want this to be. We want, of course, to improve reliability. So last time we did this in 2022, we looked at a target of 68%. You can see that in the gray dotted line. So showing that 68% of all interstate roadway miles would be reliable. For 2024 target that we're setting this time, we want that to increase to 74%. And 2026, we want that to increase again to 76%. So projecting a sort of decline in reliability, but we want our targets to improve on prior reliability. So that's kind of what we set for interstate travel time. For non-interstate travel time, see a little bit of a different trend happening where we actually see some improvements based on historical data. So from 2017 to 2019, kind of pre-COVID, you saw non-interstate travel time reliability actually improving statewide from 80% to about 83%. You see the spike again in 2020 because of COVID here, similar to interstates. And then based on the historical data, we projected a trend line out to show kind of steadily improving reliability on non-interstates. But we set the targets in a similar way as we did the interstate targets. So the 2022 target there in the gray dotted line sort of showing flat on the 80%. We wanted to show the 2024 target improving on this. So we said 85%, and then the 2026 target improving on that further to 87%. So that's non-interstate travel time. This final graph for reliability, before I get into the congestion measures, is for truck travel time reliability. This one, the units that it's reported in is a little bit different. Rather than rolling up all of the reliable miles and reporting it as a percentage, excuse me, this just gets reported as a pure index of all interstate roadway miles statewide. And it's just the interstates for truck travel time reliability, I think, because those are the predominant freight routes statewide. So we see the sort of trend actually drop in 2020. Again, different units. We, because of the federal regulations and the way they were written, this one, the goal is to see it actually decrease. So we see a lower ratio, which refers to less variation in travel time, not the percentage of reliability. So we see it drop in 2020 and then going back up, in the wrong direction in future years as travel and traffic kind of return. So This one, again, we want to see decrease. So in 2022, we set a target of 1.85. 2024, our target's 1.8, and 2026, there's a target of 1.75. So those are the reliability measures. Shift gears now to congestion, but I'll pause and see, are there any questions on the reliability ones before I go into these next ones on congestion? Okay, not seeing any, so I'll just keep going here. The first congestion measure is called peak hour excessive delay. So this means we look at the level of excessive delay on the National Highway System, or NHS, between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. And for the purposes of the measure, that's, excessive delay is considered travel time at 20 miles an hour or 60% of the posted speed limit, whichever is greater. We set this on the urbanized area level. So Northern Middlesex, of course, being, having communities that are part of the Boston urbanized area. We are required to report on this or have the NPO vote on these targets. We also set targets for the Worcester UZA and the Springfield UZA, which are applicable for this reporting. And we coordinate these measures with other state DOTs in the region as well, including New Hampshire and Connecticut. And so this is kind of some of the data that we see for peak hour excessive delay. This is a lot of information. I think we have this in a graph as well, but the important thing to look at here is the red text. We wanted to include this just in case folks wanted to reference this, as to see how it actually gets calculated. But the numbers that you see in red are referring to the total number of hours that sort of an average person living in the urbanized area would spend in traffic, essentially, for the course of a year. So in 2018, I was about 22.8 or almost 23 hours that people are spending in traffic. 2019, we saw that increase to 25. 2020, we saw it drop again as a result of the pandemic. We saw it go down to almost cut in half to about 12.7. And then in 2021, we saw that kind of inch back up to 18 as travel returned to normal. So this is, again, sort of that same data in graph form. So showing a drop in 2020 and then slightly increasing. We set targets using similar logic for the reliability ones, where in 2022, we set a target of 18.3 hours. 2024, our target is actually, it's actually increasing. So the same logic applies going from 2024 to 2026, in that we want this to, of course, decrease. We want to decrease congestion and excessive delay. The reason it's higher than 2022 is because we wanted to set them a little bit more cautiously, because there's some, there's still some uncertainty with regard to how traffic is returning and sort of congestion is returning to the region. So we're setting those a little bit cautiously, and we have a sort of new set of considerations this time around. So anyway, those are the targets we set, or 24 for 2024 and 22 for 2026. The last congestion measure is the percentage of non-SOV travel. So for this, we use data from the Census American Community Survey on people commuting to work in modes other than a single occupancy vehicle. So this would include percentage of people taking public transit or walking, biking, or telecommuting to work. Similar to the peak hour excessive delay measure, this gets reported on the UZA level, and we report that for Boston, Worcester, and Springfield UZAs. Similar timeline as well as for all these performance measures, with us adopting in December and all the NPOs voting thereafter. So this is sort of a table, a tabular, I guess, look at some of the data we see from the census on this. So essentially what we're looking at for this measure is the inverse of the drove alone category, which you can see, I think, 4 rows down there. That's kind of what we look at as far as this measure goes. So you can see, though, where the other categories come in. And if you look at the last row there, working at home, you could see that sort of start to tick up in 2020. This table and the guidance from Federal Highway is to use 5-year averages. So the 5-year estimates from the Census Bureau. So that's why it's not higher, because it's counting 2020 in addition to all the prior years. But even still, you see, over a 3% increase in the 5-year average for that in 2020 in the Boston ZA. So that of course decreased, increased non-SOB travel in that year. So here's the trend line we're seeing as far as non-SOB travel. Again, we want this to be going up. We want to encourage, mode shift away from single occupancy vehicles. So going in the right direction as far as that goes. And based on the trend line that we were seeing, we set targets for 38.77% for the 2-year target and 39.81% for the 4-year target, based on that increasing average rate of 0.71%. So, not a significant increase, but nonetheless increasing steadily. And there are a lot of contextual factors that impact this as well, but that's what we came up with based on the trend line. The final measure here is emissions reductions. So again, this is very, very specific, but nonetheless has to be included in all of this. This is just a measure that we look at for projecting out emissions reductions for all CMAQ funded projects in the 5 air quality maintenance or non-attainment, or 4 maintenance areas and 1 non-attainment area we have in Massachusetts. Of course, in the region here, Lowell is one of the air quality maintenance areas, so the MPO does have to vote on this measure area. Because of how the measure is written, it requires that we put in projects that are in the communities that are CMAQ funded. So there are actually no CMAQ funded projects in Lowell throughout the course of the next STIP. So in the table here, these are the only 2 that are actually within one of those 5 communities that are receiving CMAQ funds. And I don't think any of them actually have the Springfield project does not have the air quality analysis done. And then the CO reductions we're seeing from the one that covers Waltham, which is another maintenance area, looks at 0.354 kilograms per day, reducing carbon monoxide. So that's the target. Again, it's very specific, but that's just the regulation and what is required to roll up to. So that's this is the last slide. This is just showing a summary of all of that data, and our request today is to have a vote that would have the MPO endorse the 2024 and 2026 targets that are part of this presentation. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and I'm happy to take any questions. Share so I can see. Okay. Not seeing any hands or questions. Did you want to jump in, Justin?
Sure. I have a couple of questions.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
For going back to like the non-SOB increases, you're showing in your chart a pretty consistent increase over the next 4 years. Do you consider that something that will continue into the future throughout the state, or is this something that will eventually level out? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think as far as that, I think when we're looking at the 5-year averages, I think it'll steadily increase. I think probably the biggest driver of it is the teleworking rates that are causing more people to work from home. So there is a study right now being done in the Office of Transportation Planning at MassDOT that's looking at rates of telework and what those are expected to be. So I think we are, it's like somewhere in the middle of what we saw, in the height of the pandemic, and long term sort of intuitive, but also seeing a lot more of it in the Boston region compared to statewide. So I think it will continue to increase. It's possible that it'll kind of plateau at some point as we start to see more return to offices and things like that. But yeah, the goal is to increase that. You know, of course, anything in our discretion. I think there's also a lot of efforts from the new administration on encouraging investment in regional rail and you know, encouraging mode shift. And so all of that plays into it as well. So goal is to increase it. But we'll see what happens. Yeah.
And it's really something that we've heard a lot in our outreach for the regional transportation plan update, active transportation. More infrastructure, improving the existing infrastructure.
Mhm.
These are some of the things that we're hearing.
Yeah.
We like to see that trend continue.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Us too. Yep. So yeah, that'll be in our long range plan as well. And certainly hope to continue to see increases. Any other questions? All right. So we do have to vote on this, as I mentioned. So I will ask for a motion and second to endorse the PM3 targets as I just presented.
So moved.
A second.
All right. Excellent. Thank you. So you can go ahead and call the roll, Justin.
Okay. Derek Rabat,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Andrew Delaware,
Yes.
and Pat Holmes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Now we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Northern Middlesex NMMPO Title VI plan. This is another action item to endorse. So turn it back over to NMCOG staff to cover this one.
I can handle this, Chris Curry.
Hey, Chris.
I want to do a quick recap of the Title VI. Last month, we presented a draft Title VI document to the NPO. At that time, the NPO voted to release the draft document for public comment. The public comment period just ended last Friday. We received a number of comments from Andrew Jennings, who is an LRTA board representative and the Billerica resident. That was the only set of comments we received on the Title VI. His comments were related to transit and largely corrections and clarifications to the LRTA service information. There are a couple exceptions to that. There's comment number 9, which is about the MBTA commuter rail. We expanded the discussion on new fare categories and adjustments to train schedules. There's other comment 12 was the public comment period dates. It was a little confusing the way it was worded in the original document. And so we reworked that paragraph to clarify it and make it strictly periods for the Title VI. The other comments, again, are more specific to a number of bus routes or starting at a certain hour, that type of thing. Each of the comments have been addressed in the final document, and they include the corrections and clarifications. Andrew's final comment was thanking the Council of Governments for their efforts to ensure that no discrimination in the federal funding of transportation projects within the region. Does anyone have any specific questions regarding the comments or any changes we've made? Again, Justin has the comments up on the screen now. What we're asking for today is a vote to endorse the document if everyone is fine with the minor changes that were made.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions on these comments or the plan in general?
I'd just like to add a comment. In addition to addressing the public comments, after the public comment period, we did put the report into a final layout, and it was mostly stylistic changes that were made at that point.
Great. Thanks, Justin. All right, well, I'm not seeing any hands or questions, so I think with that, I'll ask for a motion and second to endorse the Title VI plan with these comments and changes incorporated.
So moved.
Second.
All right, great. Motion having been made by Andrew and seconded by Pat. Go ahead and call the roll, Justin.
Okay, Derek Rabat,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Andrew Dwyer,
Yes.
and Pat Wojcik.
yes,
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next item on the agenda is federal fiscal year 2023 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment number 3. Another action item to endorse. I'll turn it back over to Justin and staff to go through the amendment.
So on your screens, there's a summary of draft federal fiscal year 2023 to 2027 TIP amendments number 3. And if you recall, at our last meeting, the NPO, we presented this amendment to the NPO, and you voted to release this amendment for public comment for 21 days. So the public comment period ended on March 17th. I just want to give a quick recap of this amendment before we go to comments. So this amendment involves both highway and transit projects. The first project involved a cost increase for work on 2 495 bridges in Tewksbury, one over the Route 38 interchange and one over the 133 interchange. The reason for the amendment was that the cost estimate increased by approximately $786,000. And because it's scheduled to be advertised in May, we need to amend the TIP to fully fund this project. Additionally, the second project is to fully fund a parking system upgrade at Gallagher Terminal parking garage, total cost being $110,000. The third project is a proposal to adjust the TIP to add $100,000 in state funds to cover the match for replacement of 2 hybrid buses for the LRTA. The federal piece of this project was already part of an earlier amendment. It was amended in 2022 to include the federal piece. The state piece remained in 2023. So we wanted to make sure everything is all set by adding the state match to this TIP. And the last piece of the amendment is to actually remove a project that's currently on the TIP. It's for the purchase of automated passenger counters for the LRTA bus system. And currently scroll down and look at the table for you. So currently the project uses a mix of 5339 and 5307 federal funds. And the proposed action is basically to remove this project from the TIP and in the 23 year, but in the current TIP that we are developing, you'll see that this project may come up again in later years. So, like I said, comment period ended on March 7th. We didn't receive any comments. So the proposal today is to have the NPO consider voting to endorse this amendment as presented. With that, I can take any questions on this.
Great. Thank you, Justin. Any questions for Justin on the TIP amendment? All right. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion and second to endorse the amendment as presented.
So moved.
second,
All right, motion having been made and seconded, go ahead and call the roll.
Adrian Kribak,
Yes.
Brian Fallon,
Yes.
Andrew Dwyer,
Yes.
Pat Wojcik.
yes,
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Next on the agenda is the federal fiscal year 2024-2028 Transportation Improvement Program development. So I think there's 3 pieces under here: project scoring overview, programming scenarios, and preliminary transit projects. So
Yeah, so
back over to Justin.
we're gonna tag team this one. See if I can
Sounds good.
pull up the presentation here real quick. You see my presentation?
Yep, yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Pull that up.
Thank you,
So-
Justin.
Yep, let me start real quick here.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
so we're continuing our development of the federal fiscal year 24 to 22. And if you recall at earlier meetings, we provided you with financial information, our target information and results of TIP readiness days, which looked at design status and recommendations of projects based on where they are in design. So today, we're here to discuss the results of our TIP project scoring, which is used to prioritize in the programming. And then we'll go through a number of scenarios for programming and ask the NPO for their opinion and their vote on a preferred scenario so we can move forward with development of the TIP documents, which will be presented at next month's NPO. So I'm going to start with turning this over to Shrivanti, and she'll talk about TIP scoring, and then I'll take it on and talk about project scenarios, and then Chris will follow that up with discussion of transit projects. So go ahead, Shrivanti.
Thank you, Justin. Hi, everyone. This is Shrivanti Gopalan Narayanan, Transportation Planner at NMCOG. So I will now go over the Transportation Evaluation Criteria, TEC score summary. Next slide, please. Thank you. In order to prioritize projects for programming in the TIP, each project is evaluated based on a set of approved transportation criteria. And we call this Transportation Evaluation Criteria, TEC scoring. And this was originally developed by MassDOT, MPOs, and former Office for Commonwealth Development, OCD, to prioritize eligible TIP projects. So the total TEC scores ranges from -18 for a project that would have adverse impacts to the transportation system to +18 for a project with the highest priority. There are 6 criteria for evaluation with various subcategories in the scoring system. And the scores for each subcategories ranges from -3 to +3. Next slide, please. So the first category is condition, which has 3 subcategories: magnitude of pavement, surface condition improvement, and magnitude of improvement of other infrastructure elements. This category evaluates if the project benefits roadway infrastructure conditions. The second category is mobility and is divided into 6 subcategories, which are effect on magnitude and duration of congestion, travel time, connectivity, access, effect on other modes, regional and local traffic, number of new users, and consistency with state bicycle and/or pedestrian plans. So this category evaluates if the project reduces congestion or have benefits to regional access. Next slide. So the third category is safety and is subdivided into 5, which are effect on crash rate compared to state average, bicycle and pedestrian safety, transportation security and evacuation routes, bicycle compatibility index, and safety, pedestrian safety. So this category evaluates if the project reduces number and rate of crash for vehicles, bicyclists, or pedestrians. The fourth category is community effects and support. And this is subcategorized into 6, which are residential effects, environmental justice effects, public, local government, legislative, and regional support, effect on service to minority or low-income neighborhoods, other impact or benefits to minority or low-income neighborhoods, effect on development and redevelopment of housing stock, So this category evaluates if the project has local support and if it has impacts to environmental justice or Title VI communities. Next slide. The fifth category is land use and economic development is subdivided into business effects, sustainable development effects, consistency with regional land use and economic development plans, and effect on job creation. This category evaluates if the project impacts is sustainable development and if it is consistent with land use plans. So the sixth category and final category is environmental effects, which is subdivided into air quality, climate effects, water quality, supply, wetlands effects, historic and cultural resource effects, and effect on wildlife and endangered species. And this category evaluates if the project impact air quality, water quality, historical resources, or wildlife. Next slide. So based on all these categories and subcategories, we developed a scoring for each of the TIP projects as shown in this tabulation. The project that has scored maximum is the Lowell Rook Bridge replacement with 13.45 score, followed by Billerica Yankee Doodle Bike Path Phase 1, which has scored 12. So this is all out of 18. Whereas maintenance type projects such as Westward Interstate maintenance and related work on I-495, Westward Bridge replacement, Stony Brook over Stony Brook, has scored less with 5.57 and 4.93 respectively. So we can see that the maintenance projects have scored less. So I will pause here and see if there are any questions.
Any questions so far for Shrivanti? All right. Not seeing any Shrivanti, so.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you. I'll now pass it on to Justin.
Thank you, Shrivanti. Okay, so with the project scoring kind of outline, we're now going to take a look at potential programming options for our next tip. So the scenarios we're presenting here today, they've been developed based on a review of all of the tip eligible projects using the following, using the criteria, which includes the design status of the project, how well it's progressed, and that typically comes from our tip ready to stay recommendations. Financial constraint, which is basically how much money we get in our regional target versus how much the project costs. So we got to fit it within our allotted amount. And as Shrivanti mentioned, the project evaluation and score for each of the tip eligible projects. So with that, we've got 4 different scenarios to present to you today. So they're all fairly similar. So as we look at them, I just want everyone to pay attention to 2 different options that need to be decided on today. So one of those is, as you see on the screen, that first block is, do we move the Billerica Boston Road, Lexington Road, Flat Valley Road project from federal fiscal year 2026, where it's programmed now, to federal fiscal year 2025. And that came up, that came out of tip ready to stay recommendations because the project is moving quickly through design. And MassDOT and the NPO feels like this project can move forward. And the second option that we need to look at is how we need to program the last year of the tip. So we're currently in that 23 to 27 range. We're adding 2028 for development of this next tip. We need to figure out how we program that last year. So scenario 1 is actually we wanted to give the NPO kind of a staff preferred option. So this is, so scenario one is going to be considered the staff recommendation, but feel free to make a different, so on which scenario we move through. So this scenario includes moving the Billerica, Boston Road, Glad Valley, Lexington Road project from 26 to 25. I hadn't mentioned this before, but the VFW highway project, resurfacing project in Lowell, increased in cost. So it's currently programmed in 2025. The cost increase has increased in such a way that it will not fit into targets anymore. It's quite a bit over our target for 2025. So we're making the decision to program it over 2 years of the tip. Basically get it in. So cost increases and financial constraint for that change. And you'll see that in all the scenarios. In 2028, we're going to look at programming 2 projects, the Lowell Connector Reconstruction Project at Gorham Street and the Vinyl Square improvements in Chelsea. So this is just a summary of all of the projects that would be included in scenario 1. And so I just want to run through all of the projects really quickly. We're not going to go through all of the different scenarios with all the projects, but in federal fiscal year 24, the proposal is to keep Westford's project rehabilitation of Boston Road in that year. It's moving toward being toward itself. In federal fiscal year 2025, I talked about VFW Highway, year 1 of that, along with Chelmsford, Route 110 and 495 intersection improvements, which includes signalization of that interchange. And I just mentioned the Boston Road Lexington Glad Valley intersection moving forward 26 to 25. 2026 VFW Highway year number 2, year number 1 of Chelmsford Street improvements in Chelmsford near the town center. 2027 year 2 of Chelmsford Street and the Tewksbury Town Center. There are 2 intersections in Tewksbury near the town center that are being considered as to be improved as part of that project. And in 2028, the Lowell Connector and the Vinyl Square project, leaving $1.1 million unfunded in 2028. So that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is very similar to scenario 1, except for in 2028, we proposed programming the Lowell Pawtucket Street corridor improvement project. When we went through the scoring process, Pawtucket Street came out as the highest scoring project of those projects that were eligible to go into 2028. And they're all at very early design status, so it's basically an exercise in how do we fit it into how much money we have. So when we programmed in 2028 the Pawtucket Street improvements, the project's about $8 million. We have $14 million in target. So you're leaving just over $5 million unprogrammed in 2028, as opposed to the 1.1 in scenario 2. So that's the difference between those 2 scenarios. Scenario 3 is very similar, with the exception that we decide not to move the Billerica, Boston Road, Lexington Road, Glad Valley Road project forward in the tip. So we would keep it where it's currently programmed in 2026. We just wouldn't move it forward. That means we would fund more funding for the VFW Highway in 2025 and less in 2026. And scenario 3, similar to scenario 1, we programmed the 2 projects in 2028. So you see the funding and the target for each of those. Scenario 4, similar to scenario 2, except for Billerica remains in 2026 and Pawtucket Street is programmed in 2028. See the summary here. Just note that there's 5 unprogrammed. So this is just a side-by-side comparison of all the different scenarios and the different projects that are proposed to be included on the highway side. So you'll see Boston Road stays the same in each scenario. I-495-110 stays the same, BW Highway stays the same. The only issues are, what do we do with Billerica Boston Road? And what do we do in 2020? So I'm going to pause there and see if anyone has any thoughts on which scenario they prefer, or which direction they want to go in with this stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Justin. Any comments? Yeah, go ahead, Derek Schuster. Yep.
Thanks. Justin, I just wanted to note that it looked from our readiness day exercise that the Vinyl Square project in Chelmsford, 612977, had a recommended ready year of 2029.
Yes.
I just wanted to note that, so based on readiness days, MassDOT doesn't recommend going prior to that project without further context or information. That said, it's an out year, and it's ultimately at the discretion of the NPO.
It's very early. It's very early on in design. It was just recently approved by MassDOT PRC, so it's just recently become a TIP eligible project. But again, it's an out year. We were just looking at this purely with the financial constraint aspect of that project, of programming the two projects versus the one project in 2028.
Thanks, Justin. Other comments? Yep, Pat, go ahead.
Yeah, just if you're looking for thoughts on the different scenarios, I mean, I always think that it's best if we can use as much or program as much of the funds as possible. So I would prefer, probably scenario one, you said does that very well. Having said that, though, I mean, I know the Pawtucket corridor improvements has a high tech score. Is there any likelihood that that might be funded by one of the state programs that also might happen over the next several years?
Pawtucket Street, is that what you're referring to?
Yes, because it looks like that's the trade-off, right? Pawtucket Street corridor versus Vinyl Square.
Right. So Pawtucket Street's an $8 million project. I mean, it's fairly hefty size.
So I can
Yeah.
speak to that. At the moment, for the 24 to 28 development tip, the statewide program targets and project lists have been mostly set with very little balance remaining on the statewide program side. So unfortunately, I don't believe it's likely that the state would be able to commit to programming that project at this time.
Okay. All right, well, I guess, I'll say that my preference still would be, I think I would go with your preferred scenario one, which looks to be, kind of programming a lot of the funds that are available for the most.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
No, I just want to echo Pat's comments. I would also support scenario one. I think it targets a number of different choke points in the region, some like actually highly dangerous intersections as well. So it would take, they're high impact projects. To Pat's point, they hit a number of different places. So I think it's diverse impact, but also substantial safety impact, given earlier presentations of this meeting. So I would also recommend scenario.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Yeah, it looks like Lowell still has a project in 2028 and scenario one. So yeah, and there's always future tip cycles and things change, and so the out years, there's always potential for next year's tip to include the Lowell intersections project as well.
And it was the explicit desire of the town of Chelmsford to prioritize Market Square, even though it's very early in the
Gotcha.
design process. They definitely told us it was their number one priority.
Okay. Good to know. Go ahead, Schuster.
Yeah, between the connector reconstruction or the Pawtucket Falls project corridor improvements, have both been scored, and if so, which scored higher? Just feel like that should be taken into account.
So Pawtucket Street scored the highest, and that's why it's one of our options. Vinyl Square was scored very high, but it was just under, and then the whole connector. It was further down. But it's low connector is something that's been on the city's radar for, I don't know, 10 years at this point. And I know it's very close to 25% design.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Yeah, sounds like there's general consensus, Justin, on scenario 1. So did you want to take a formal vote, or is that sufficient to sort of give the direction to sort of program that in the draft ESTIP document or webpage?
Let's think about. What do you,
Okay.
What do you
All
think?
right, sounds good. Yeah, so I'll ask for a motion and second to I guess indicate consensus for scenario 1 as discussed and presented.
So moved.
Second,
All right, thank you. So go ahead and call the roll, Justin.
Okay, thank you. Derek Cabana,
Yes.
Brian Balance,
Yes.
Andrew Delaware,
Yes.
and Pat Williams.
yes,
Okay, thank you. So we'll move forward with scenario 1, and we'll present that. We'll present the draft at next month.
All right, sounds good.
And we have a little more to go
Yep.
with TIP development.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yep, the trans. Yep.
So Derek Schuster just
Statewide.
referred to the state program as well. So we just wanted to show you what projects are proposed to be programmed using those state funds, and you see federal fiscal year 2024. You're going to see Roy Bridge replacement, which is the highest priority. And, we're excited to move forward with that and get that to advertising in the next year. And we also include the Yankee Doodle Bike Path construction phase 1 of that project, as well as 2 replacements on I-495 in Chelmsford, the 495 over Gorham Street and 495 over Westford Street. And in 2025, the Stony Brook Bridge replacement in Westford, the Safe Routes to School project in Dracut, as well as more interstate maintenance on 495 in Westford. So those are the state projects that you'll be seeing as we present the TIP next month. So any questions on this?
Questions? Okay, don't see any, so we can continue.
All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Chris Curry, who's going to talk a little bit about the preliminary transit project listings.
So, Mike on, all right, here we go.
Yep, there you go, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. I want to quickly run through the transit projects. Over here in the gray box, I'm pointing to, you can't see, but those are projects that are programmed annually. So the IT equipment and maintenance, the purchasing of capital spare parts, transit planning, building and terminal building equipment and maintenance, as well as operating assistance. So those are programmed throughout the 24 to 28 TIP. On the blue box, it lists the additional projects programmed in 2024. So you get $250,000 for Gallagher terminal upgrades, Again, that's got a lot to do with the new fare box, excuse me, the fare collection system for the parking facility. $817,000 for the replacement of a 135-foot hybrid bus. There's $1 million for the purchase of a new fixed route dispatching software that will include vehicle location, passenger counters, and annunciators. 3.6 million for McGuire paratransit maintenance facility improvements. There'd be significant work in that property. And then there's 15 million for the rehab of the ADA and commuter access way at the terminal. Now that includes the replacement of the pedestrian bridge over the tracks, a replacement of the stairs, a new elevator cab, and the platform to be extended to meet the new ADA requirements. Justin, can you move the next slide? Thank you. And then in 2025 and 2026, they're starting to, the LRT is moving towards zero emissions with the vehicles and overall service. In 2025, they get 200,000 for garage decking repairs and 2.5 million for facility upgrades and charging infrastructure for zero emission vehicles. And then in 2026, we've got 1.5 million for a solar array project at the Gallagher Intermodal Transportation Center. And another 6.6 million for 6 battery electric buses, which may end up as hybrids, but we'll see how it goes. And in 2027, there's $40,000 for administrative vehicle and just under $16.5 million for 12 battery electric buses. When those may be spread out over a couple of years. And then finally, in 2028, you've got $2 million for the Hale Street solar roof project rehab. And that is a quick run through of the transit projects. If you have any questions, try to help.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions for Chris?
Oh, again, I want to stress these are preliminary lists and subject and likely to change between now and when it's all accepted.
Okay.
I have a question.
Thanks, Chris. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Jennifer Claro from the town of Westford. And I was just wondering, I'm kind of new in participating in this meeting, so this question might not be appropriate, but I was just wondering, looking at the hybrid and electric buses, and of course, running a transportation program with our van service through multiple towns. Are there any funds that are applicable to Council on Aging's and towns for their transportation, for upgrading from vehicles that are utilizing gas that are like 13 passenger vehicles? Is that something that has been taken into account or is considered in these types of projects?
Yeah, take that, Derek.
I can take it if you'd
Go
like.
ahead.
Chris, did you have anything?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say that MassDOT's Rail and Transit Division runs a community transit grant program that provides discretionary grants to councils on aging and other organizations that serve older adults and people with disabilities. So I don't know, Derek Schuster, if you maybe want to find the link for that and put that in the chat. That might be one resource. That's a competitive program. So I think they released the guidance for that sometime. I'm not sure on the timing, but it's essentially that those organizations would apply to that program, and then once they're awarded, they would get put into the tip that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Jennifer, feel free to follow up with us. We can talk about your specific issues.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add that funding color is Federal Transit Authority or Administration, excuse me, 5310. We call it the Community Transit Grant Program in Massachusetts, and I believe solicitations are around the fall. with the awards usually in the beginning of the year. Although there were no awards this year for Northern Middlesex Region Community Transit Grant, award announcements were made in the last couple months for councils on aging that had solicited projects across the Commonwealth. And there have been 5310 and Community Transit Grant awards in the Northern Middlesex region in previous years.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Regarding, and I know I was on a call with NMOG recently with several other COAs, and one of the things that we were discussing was funding. Is that how we are really having a hard time trying to keep up with the ridership with our increasing older adult population and you know not having necessarily additional funding that's needed to kind of keep up with the growth. And I was just wondering, is that taken into consideration in these planning budgets? How to kind of help support COAs with you know, providing increased transportation for older adults and you know, residents that are disabled at, you know, that are of any age.
Yeah, Jennifer, that can be the 5310 grant program as well. So the community grants, if you add service, that will to benefit the elderly and disabled, that can be funded at a 50-50 match. But that's also in the community grant program. Yes.
I see Derek Schuster had a hand up. Did you want to comment on that as well?
I did. So what Chris said is accurate. You can leverage 5310, but another mechanism available to regions if they wish is with their regional highway target funding, if and when there's a balance available and if it's consistent with the long range transportation plan goals for the region, an MPO can decide to use its regional highway target money to flex to transit, as NMCOG has done in the past for LRTA investments. And if it was the will of the MPO, they could also use regional highway target balances if and when available for council on aging vehicle replacement and purchasing. Hasn't been done before in the region, but it is possible if that's something that is an identified goal as you guys are doing your long range transportation plan development to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Jessica, go ahead.
I just have a question on Derek's comment. You said they could use it to acquire another vehicle. Can they use the funds for operating costs?
No, unfortunately, Flex to FTA can generally only be used for capital purchases.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, but if it is for the LRTA, it could be for operating. I think it would just have to go directly to a transit authority. I don't know if we could fund operating for entities besides RTAs, but if it's operating service, then we can flex like CMAQ funding for operating.
For pilot programs.
Right, for new and expanded service, just for the RTA.
Okay.
Yeah, the federal rules get a little funky, but there are options out there.
Yeah, we can send you some information offline about the flexing process. Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Could I also get that information as well?
Sure. Yeah, we'll send that over to Justin and Jessica and I'm sure, yeah, we'll be able to do that too. Yeah.
We're planning to send a follow-up email to the MPO distribution list with further information. Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Any other questions on the 24 to 28 tip? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Justin, Shravanti, and Chris. Appreciate it. I think the last substantive item is the federal fiscal year 2024 Unified Planning Work Program development. So turn this one back over to the staff as well.
What up? I'm switching monitors back and forth, so can everyone see this?
Yes, yeah, I can see the
Okay.
spreadsheet for UPWP.
Yes, a
Yep.
spreadsheet for funding. Okay.
Yep.
Back in January, we had a meeting between Massachusetts Regional Planning Agencies and MassDOT where we talked a lot about budgeting for the various certification plans that we are currently working on, the Long Range Regional Transportation Plan, the TIP, and the UPWP, or Unified Planning Work Program. So at that meeting, we were provided with budget information and guidance for developing the program. This is basically a listing of all of the activities that NPO staff will be undertaking over the next federal fiscal year, beginning in October 1 of 2023, running through September 30th of 2024. And so I just want to go over our financial budget per se here today. And this is going to be how we develop the budget for all the different activities that we put in the UPWP and present a preliminary task list and budget at next month's NPO. So if you look at the table at the top here, the small table to the top to the left. So there are 3 columns. They're outlining the state's apportionment for regional planning activities. So federal 2023 PL is planning funds apportionment is projected to be approximately $12.1 billion with an obligation authority of 9% and a state match, which comes to a total of just over $13.6 million for planning activities. And if you combine that, because this is the 13.6 is for highway PL funding. If you look at the row below that, this is a total funds available for our UPWP activities throughout the state, 18.2. That includes both the PL funds and funds that come from the Federal Transit Administration, titled 5303, which is just a program aimed at providing funding for transit planning. So we want to look at our region, the main table below, and we've highlighted our region. I blew up the font so we can read it. So this table outlines how much each region and how much each NPO and RPA receives for their UPWP activities out of that $18.2 million number. And that each NPO follows an agreed upon formula. It's called the MARPA formula, and it's based on population and urbanized population. So if you look at the first column here, 40% of the funds are split between the 10 NPOs in the state. So it's kind of split evenly. So Northern Middlesex getting $544,300, just like everyone else. The next column, 30% of that PL funding goes based on the relative size of the population in the region. And it's based on the 2020 population. We approximately, in our region, it's approximately 4.48%. So we receive approximately $183,000. The other 30% in the PL formula goes based on relative size of an urbanized population, and our region is mostly urban in nature. So you see a little bit higher percentage in our region, where we receive approximately 4.66% of that total, for $190,390. The next columns are the 5303, the transit funding. If you, it's just basically a comparison between 23 and 24. And you see, when you look at the 2 years, 24 starting October, when we're going to receive approximately $4,000, $4,700 more in 5303 funding. And yeah, that you add all of that up, and the total funding for the NPO for 2024 is $1.115 and that's an increase of about $24,000 over our current work program. So that's kind of the available funding in a nutshell, and it's what we're going to use as our budget moving forward. And in next month's meeting, we'll provide a preliminary list of activities that NPO staff will be taking on in the new year. And so with that, I'll take any questions on this.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Any questions for Justin on the UPWP financials or development? All right. Seeing none. Thanks, Justin. Anything else on UPWP or move on to other business?
Stay tuned for next month.
All right, so other business, I see there's a note, the next meeting date will be April 26th. So that'll be an important meeting because we'll vote out the tip on that date, but any other business to bring before the NPO? Okay, not seeing any. So with that, I'll ask for a motion and second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, without objection, we are adjourned. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you back here in April. Have a good rest of the day.
Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, is Sarah there? Sarah still there? No, she ran off. Okay. Sorry,
Yeah, no,
Dave.
that's all right.
I couldn't get her fast enough.
This one went long.